Alexander and Jim, I remember talking with you about this movie about 10 years ago. I think that was maybe when you had the first idea or conversation. Do I have the timing about right?
Yeah, I don't remember the conversation exactly.
Of the
but
timing,
the timing
about
is
10
right.
years past.
We had wanted this to be our first film after Sideways.
And it wasn't, but
Nope.
tell me about the evolution, about what that time meant and what the process of writing demanded in terms of time.
Yeah, we had no idea that this would take so darn long to get made, and it took so long really for two reasons. One, the screenplay was hard to, because it's such a big idea and you can take it in so many directions. We had the premise. It's a good movie premise. It's silly and serious and cinematic, and allows for a lot of, allows us to throw our net of, let's say, social satire around a lot of things. How do you find the right story and character to serve as a vehicle to guide us through a world in which downsizing could actually happen? So that took longer than we thought, and then it was nearly impossible to find funding. We first tried in 2009 unsuccessfully, realizing it wasn't the right time. I went and made 2 other features, and we did other stuff, and then after Nebraska, circled back around to it. And even then, it coalesced and fell apart a couple times before finally coming together.
When you think back to the original idea that you had, the original spark of the story, did the movie end up reflecting that spark pretty authentically, even if it took different paths as you were writing it?
Yeah, for sure.
And what was that spark? What was that initial idea?
I mean, there was one spark, which was my brother was thinking about making people tiny and talking to me about it, and he wasn't thinking about a movie, he just was...
What ifing?
Yeah, making some calculations. And then I thought, oh, that could make an interesting movie, and really, when I say it, the most important thing for all of us, I think, as we were making this movie that has a lot of visual effects in it and is sort of on a different scale than other movies made, we wanted to make sure that it still felt like a movie about people and a movie that Alexander made. And I remember watching the first cut without the visual effects and everything and saying, looks like an Alexander Payne movie, and that made me happy.
Hong, do you remember that first meeting about this film and why this part was important to you?
I do. Well, when I went in and read for John, he told me that was very lovely what you did, and just sit tight because you're not going to hear anything for 2 months. And I heard 2 days later that Alexander had seen my audition tape, so that was an incredibly exciting phone call to get, and then to get to meet this man that I had admired for a very long time. I've seen all of Alexander's films. And I was a little bit of a goober. I didn't think that I made a really strong impression on him. I thought, well, he thinks I'm a good egg, but I don't know. I might have talked myself out of the role, honestly.
No, just not to bore you with the anecdote you might not be interested in, but I liked her audition tape so much that I told John, please arrange for me to have a coffee with her. Because when she came back for the callback, I wanted to have her succeed, so I could get to know her a little bit and then could give her some direction.
Mark, Alexander has a team with whom he works very closely. Jim is a member of that. Music, Rolf Kent. Costumes, Wendy Chuck. Editor, Kevin Tent. Fade and Papa Michael. Cinematographer. It's a group, a core group. You're the interloper, right? How did you work your way into the circle?
Well, you said, when I talked to you about it earlier, you said a lot of guys must have turned the job down. No, are you kidding?
You didn't have to say that.
The opportunity to produce an Alexander Payne movie is just too delicious. And so Alexander called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it, and I probably took all of 7 seconds before I said yes. But we had been working on something. We've known each other for a long time, never really done a film together, and we had been working on a film that we still hope to do at some point in Spanish, since we both speak Spanish, and it's based on a short story we both like a lot. And it was just going along well, and I think the timing was perfect. So Alexander asked me if I'd come in. This was about 3 years ago, so I really am a newcomer.
Can I ask about the day you shot the scene where your character says that she wants to go to Norway? Can you talk a little bit about that day and about what that meant to you as an actor, and what that meant to you to director?
Well, oddly, it's those big scenes that I actually don't really try to overthink. Of course, I know that it's important in the movie, but hopefully, if I've done all of my homework, right, it's not this thing that I really have to muscle. And everything that I prepared for all of the other scenes and all of the character work is going to give me that momentum to do a big scene like that. And that was actually our first take in that's in
Take
the
one.
movie.
That's unbelievable. That in the film is the first time.
I could never do that with, to deliver an intimate performance and cry with those lights and the unblinking cyclops of the camera creeping steadily close and having that concentration and focus. How the hell do you, anyway. A neat thing about being director is watching these people do that, watching these great actors do that stuff. It's pretty unbelievable.
When you were thinking about the production design, about what this Leisureland is going to look like, I was thinking about Celebration, the Disney city in Florida. I was thinking of the Queen of Versailles, the documentary about those houses. Was there a reference that you all talked about what this made-up world would look like, and where did you end up either creating it or filming it?
Yeah, it's sort of a combo pack among Orlando, Palm Springs, and Las Vegas. I didn't want it to have that kind of precious precision that you maybe saw in Edward Scissorhands or The Truman Show. It still should feel real and lived in and so forth. And a lot of it is designed, I mean, when they're in the viewing corridor early on and looking through the big windows, that's all digital, but based on months and months of design by urban planners we hired. Like, really, what would this be? And then in terms of the houses, we found locations. You think Canadians are all thrifty and modest and stuff. They ain't. It's all a big front. They have some of the most hideous, opulent mansions and McMansions you've ever seen in your life up there.
This is near Toronto, Ontario?
Outside of Toronto, yeah. So the house where they deliver Matt Damon, his big castle, is a location in Toronto. They all were.
I want to ask you about this idea of this city being walled off and then the people who work in it, who support it, being walled off. Certainly that's a topical idea. How early in the story was there a wall or the separation between the haves and have-nots?
Well, that is a case of the world catching up with us.
Sadly.
Yes, we had written that in fairly early on before there was before a wall was even a twinkle in our president's eye. But I was the funny. This is kind of off topic, but it's so hard to comprehend people accepting this absurd idea of building this wall around our country. But I guess so many communities now are built as walled communities that it's become an idea that's easier to comprehend.
I want to come back to casting, about getting Matt on and what Matt meant to the film in terms of getting it made. Did that help? And
oh, God, yes.
I would hope so.
He's a big bankable movie star.
Okay.
Thank God he exists. Had he not existed, I don't know whom I would have cast. No, seriously. And I needed a wonderful actor who I also believe can play an everyman. In his mid-40s, and who can also help me get a hefty budget. And there's really only Matt Damon. Mr. Hanks could have done it, but he's a little older, half a generation older, and so not quite right. Could have played it 10 years ago.
probably wouldn't shave his head either.
Well, that was movie magic.
Oh my goodness. Didn't see my barber then.
But Damon is the guy. Damon's the guy.
Alexander, Jim, Mark, Hong, thank you for bringing us your movie.